Our wisdom tale today comes from the Buddhist tradition. The title is The Mustard Seed, and I brought mustard seed to show you what that looks like. In the village where this story takes place in India, everyone used mustard seed to flavor their cooking, so everyone had mustard seed. You might not have mustard seed in your house, but in those days, everyone had it. So the story begins with a young woman named Kisa Gotami. Kisa was a young mother who had a son whom she loved more than anything in all the world. She loved him when he was happy, but she also loved him when he was grumpy and throwing tantrums and whiny. She even loved him when he was sleeping. There came a time when the young boy became very ill. Doctors and healers were not able to cure him, and so he died. Kisa was beside herself with grief. She picked up the boy's body and wrapped it in blankets, carrying it about the village, asking anyone that she met if they knew how to bring her son back to life. One kind friend suggested that she visit the Buddha, the enlightened one, who would surely be able to help her. Kisa approached the Buddha, carrying her son's body and weeping. "Please help me. Please tell me how to bring my son back to life." The Buddha looked at her and felt great compassion. "I can help you," he said. "But first you must bring me some mustard seed from a home where no loved one has ever died, no parent or grandparent, no brother or sister, no child or much-loved friend." Sensing hope for the first time since her son had died, Kisa went back home and laid her son's body on the bed. She set out to find some mustard seed. The first place Kisa visited was the house next door. She knocked on the door and waited. When her neighbor came to the door, Kisa asked for a handful of mustard seed. "Why, of course, Kisa. I'll be right back." As the neighbor woman was about to hand her the mustard seed, Kisa remembered to ask if anyone from the household had died. "Kisa, don't you remember? My father died a year ago, and we were sad for a long time. We still miss him." Dejected, Kisa went away without taking the mustard seed. When Kisa visited a second house and asked for mustard seed, that neighbor reminded her that a beloved niece had died in that house 5 years ago. Sadly, Kisa went away without any mustard seed. So Kisa proceeded from house to house, visiting every home in the village. At each stop, the family spoke of a mother, a nephew, a grandparent, or a beloved child who had died. Each family told a tale of grief and loss. When she had visited the last house in the village, it became clear to Kisa that what the Buddha had asked her to do was impossible. She was overcome with sadness and could not go any further. She found a banyan tree at the edge of the village and sat down to cry. Kisa cried for hours. Over time, though, a strange peace came over her. She thought about all the stories she had heard that day, of loved ones who had died and of families who had experienced terrible sadness. She realized that she was not alone in experiencing the death of someone she loved. She was not alone in her grief and her sadness. The next day, she returned to the Buddha. When she told him of her search for the mustard seed that could not be found, he nodded. Our lives in this world are not permanent. Each one of us must die, some at a young age and some older. All of us will know times of great happiness and times of deep sorrow. Do not try to keep yourself free from these human experiences. Try instead to be kind and compassionate to all beings, enjoying all the gifts that life brings. Kisa was so moved by the teachings of the Buddha that she became a member of his community and was ordained as a nun. Even though she always missed her son, she learned to accept his death and to take comfort in knowing that she was not alone in her grief. She was one of the Buddha's foremost disciples, and she spent her life sharing compassion with others who were suffering with grief. So this story reminds us that everyone will experience grief in their lifetime, and it calls us to remember to respond to each other in our times of mourning. by attending memorial services, sharing casseroles, sending cards, or simply being present with them in their grief. It's a blessing of living in community with others, to be able to show compassion and to ease another's suffering and to receive compassion.